we're not Italian Americans, we're not Irish Americans, we're not Korean Americans, we're not Black Americans, we're not Japanese Americans, we're not Latin Americans, we are Americans. And just that idea that America is not a race, it's a set of values and principles that you abide by that creates this social cohesion. And this is what I believe America should really be about.
With awards from George Washington University, the Korean Arts Association, the Corcoran Gallery of Art, and most recently, the inaugural title of Artist of the Year by Eileen Kaminsky Family Foundation. Kwon Lee is an American painter whose gestural mark-making expressive color palettes with world mythologies. Lee draws inspiration from a broad range of sources including Jungian psychoanalysis, local religious traditions, and his lifelong commitment to martial arts. Prior to developing a love for painting, Lee was a Division I athlete who placed in the Taekwondo Nationals for 3 consecutive years. Lee has carried this martial arts intensity into his artwork, where it translated into large-scale works and a diversity of dynamic brushstrokes. The resulting compositions attest to an artist who uses his entire body to paint symbolic works that contain oblique references to archetypal myths from around the world. Lastly, Kwon Lee has most recently appeared on the Jesse Lee Peterson Show, and today he joins me on The Bald Brad Show. All right, Kwon Lee, thank you so much for joining The Bald Brad Show. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Brad.
How's the weather over there in New York?
It's very doomy and it's very gloomy. So gloomy. The sun's not out, so it's the lighting is a little bit weird here. So, but it's all good.
I got to ask, so I'm over here in Southern California and you're over there in New York, and how has the pandemic been treating you all the way over there across the country?
I go to Cali pretty often actually, and what they both have in common is it's we're shut down, but things are starting to pick back up. So I know that for my industry, the galleries, the openings for actually attending the physical spaces have just started this Thursday, so that's a good sign. But we'll see. I'm pretty, I'm trying to limit my wearing masks and caring about any of that, and I just pretty much go on anyways with my own life and offend people, so it's okay.
Now, as far as because you're an artist and you're a painter, and to kind of correlate that to the pandemic, has that influenced you in any way? Because I'm an introvert, so this pandemic being locked down hasn't bothered me at all from going out. But as a painter, do you get your inspiration from going out, or are you totally comfortable with just working inside, not having to go out?
A lot of painters, they need to they like to get inspiration from other artists, and I think that applies, of course, to in regards to the formalistic side of things. But I think I'm much more contextually driven. So if I read something that's stimulating, or I start diving down some sort of symbolic excavation that I feel like resonates with our culture, or something that's underemphasized, I want to overemphasize, so especially with masculine imagery, like these different angles that I'm more philosophically oriented in a way, and I'm almost exploring these ideas in the realm of painting. So I like, it's always nice to see other artists, and there will be those pieces that really hit me, but I definitely produce from a sort of philosophical impulse.
Now, I find it interesting because doing research about you, you have clearly a knack for Taekwondo. But when I think of a painter or an artist, I don't think of somebody that was doing, I don't know if you would call it a mixed martial art, but doing Taekwondo for, I would imagine, majority of your life, because being a D1, going to nationals, I think 3 times.
Yeah, I got bronze. I kept losing to my brother, or that one really tall kid who's let me get by.
Well, can you kind of take us through your early childhood, and then how you got into Taekwondo, and then how that ultimately morphed into being an artist?
Sure. I grew up in a pretty typical Korean American background, although my parents, they were when they immigrated here legally, they made it really clear that they wanted to have us participate in the traditional cultures of playing an instrument, having some kind of martial art, and then being good at, you know, school, being good at your academics. But I was strange because I was terrible at school. I did not play instruments well, so I was like, I better be doing something well. So I went really hard with the fighting, and I really excelled at that actually. But during that time, I was still painting, and you know, like most artists, we dived into this as a form of self-expression, and it was really a form of channeling. But I think what took it further was I started to apply those martial art principles into my painting practice. And I think that's really what caused me to be sort of uncommon amongst the uncommon, because artists are already sort of strange people. But so I always felt like I was a contrast in that regard. And, you know, especially now that's doubled with my, I guess, political predilections.
And I find it interesting because, so my father was a black belt in Shotokan, and I never did karate. I never did Brazilian jiu-jitsu, although I wanted to, but I played ice hockey for 25 years. And I think for our youth, it is very important for them to get into some sort of athletics, because it's, for me, the building blocks and the foundation of a youth. And it kind of builds a certain self within them that's kind of extrapolating into our culture. And so doing research about Taekwondo, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there was 5 core tenets of Taekwondo: courtesy, integrity, perseverance, self-control, and an indomitable spirit. Is that right?
That's a throwback for me. I've been so out of the loop, man. Again, I was a junior national competitor. But yeah, that is true. And you know, it's what you're saying is definitely applicable in regards to, I definitely would recommend any, especially boys in their teenage, you know, during that ritually defined stage, you know, tapping into martial arts is a great outlet, because you get to be aggressive, you get to fight, you get to but you're learning that all under a certain parameter. You know, there's a sensei there, and senseis are selected, by the way. You can't just be a world champion and suddenly start teaching. You need to be approved by a board, especially with the more hands-on martial arts. And what they're looking for is character, you know, so you can instill values, so that you understand the idea that if a true martial artist has power but does not abuse it. And that's important, because that's why I noticed that martial artists who really excel, they tend to be conservative, because they understand that if you're going to have power, you need to also have responsibility. But when you give power to a person who doesn't have that struggle and that dissonance that's necessary to appreciate that perspective, they just want more, and they don't have the they don't carry themselves with those challenges. But in martial arts, you're literally physically getting back up over and over again. So it builds a certain character. So I martial arts is something I would recommend actually heavily, you know, and you can apply it to other things.
And I couldn't agree more.
If you hear that weird little growling, I'm sorry. That's my puppy.
And you know what's funny is I saw the puppy on Instagram, and it's absolutely adorable. And I think
she's a little bit vain, you know, like she'll pose for cameras and things. So if you hear a little growling, it's because she wants me to look at her, but I'm looking at the bald man.
you know, it's so funny because I actually grew up, we always had dogs growing up. And I think something my father always taught me was you could tell a lot by a dog lover or somebody that's a lover of animals.
Right.
And
continue, ignore.
The viewers are only going to love it. And so something I thought was so interesting was you brought up self-control and then responsibility and then overcoming things. And I think you see that all the way in sports, of persevering and then overcoming, which in my mind would be attributed to the indomitable spirit of never letting go. You fall down, you get back up, and you keep going. And something that I've kind of observed through today's culture, through other people's milieus, is that idea of like, once I fall, well, I don't know if I want to get back up. Maybe it's just easier to give up and move on to another thing. And, or maybe it's attributed to some sort of instant gratification. But that's why I think sports or like Taekwondo and mixed martial arts is so.
Well, Brad, the martial art that I love. I'm sorry, Sean, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good.
Oh, well, the martial art that I love now is judo. And in judo, they say fall down 6 times, get up 7, right? Or was it 7 or 8? But the idea comes from that you know, resilience and this notion that a setback is a setup for a comeback. You learn that in martial arts and a lot of sports for sure. But for me, and this is something I like about your show too, is you're talking about the ideas too, and the deeper part of human nature. I think we like to believe that we're just conscious decision makers, that function cerebrally the whole time, but we're a lot more circumstantial than is to believe. And for example, if a person gets a lot more physically in shape and they get a lot more upper body strength, this is a study done by the Telegraph in the United Kingdom, they're more likely to be conservative. Just because, so there's certain biological imperatives that push a person's political disposition. And it's something that actually Jordan Peterson talks about too. In fact, a lot of this stuff is circumstantial, where our ideas actually have us. We don't have our own ideas. And this is why I'm big on trying to support people at the nuclear level. Get in shape, eat healthier, although I've been eating really bad lately. But you know what I mean, the general audience, like have that down to a routine, at least to a point. And martial arts or a sport will definitely ground you to a degree with all that.
I like that idea of, and I want to definitely get into this later, the idea of your readings, because just hearing you talk in your other interviews, the way you carry yourself definitely shows your training in Taekwondo, but also I could see that your readings not only influence you on an individual level, but also through your art. So I definitely want to get into that in a moment, but I want to backtrack a little bit, because you said your parents were immigrants, and my father was an immigrant from England as well, came over legally. And I like that you added in there, because I always throw that in there as well, legally. There's a massive issue clearly going on at the border, and I've covered this a lot, but not only do you think, but what do your parents think about what is happening with this illegal immigration crisis at the U.S.-Mexico border?
So that generation, right? I mean, first of all, it's important to create the distinction that immigrants who came to this country at that generation is not the same as American baby boomers during that time, right? But they came during that time because baby boomers are regarded as the most narcissistic generation ever, because they're the ones who created postmodern theory, feminism, this social justice phenomena. Like, it all comes from the economic opportunity to just be vain and narcissistic, essentially, because you can judge a generation by how you sort of pass down for the next generation, essentially. And what they did is, anyways, I'm going on to a different rant, but my parents came here, and my parents came here for the same reason many Koreans come here, to become Americans. E pluribus unum, out of many one. And that sentiment is something that we are forgetting. I often believe, and I'm going to sound like a hypocrite here, because if you Google me, it's going to say, my person who wrote my website, it says Korean American artist. It should just be American artist. Because if you I really think people should take that out. We're not Italian Americans. We're not Irish Americans. We're not Korean Americans. We're not Black Americans. We're not Japanese Americans. We're not Latin Americans. We are Americans. And just that idea that America is not a race, it's a set of values and principles that you abide by that creates this social cohesion. And this is what I believe America should really be about. But that's why my parents, they came here to live that. They came here to actually take action based on those principles and beliefs. So they're actually not that conscientious of these theories or policy or any of that. They're here living the experience of being American. They're old school people, but I will say though that they're now starting to become more aware of it though, because my father, when he came to this country, he said that, I guess technically I was really more like a libertarian, but without changing a single point on any issue in 40 years, he's now looked upon as like this right-wing person amongst his peers, because the social fabric has changed so much. So I think now, with that context, it's sort of revealing how things have unfolded, and how the left wants to, divide and conquer and create everyone into these tribes and tell women that this is the narrative that caused you should be feeling this, men should be feeling, instead of out of many one. It's different tribes that have to go castigate against one another. So I think that's the fault here. But many Koreans of that time, they came here to become essentially conservatives. Like, they came there, when they were in Korea, they understood that if we're going to come to this country, we're going to be conservatives, which is why so many of them love guns.
and we'll get into that too, because and it's so funny because talking to you, there's so many crossovers between what we're talking about, not just with the social fabric and not just with the individual, and then also talking about the collective, but that all extrapolates through your artwork. So it's almost hard to kind of talk in such a point-to-point conversation, because everything within what I see from you really interwoves everything about you. And so it's almost difficult because I see your aspect of Taekwondo in your art. I see the aspect of the Korean culture in your art. I see the aspect of the mythology in your art, or looking at other cultures, Western culture, the Second Amendment. All these things are woven into your art. And I'm not an art person. And I believe Jesse Lee Peterson said the same thing, but there is something about your art that I gravitate towards, and something that I even showed my students. And I teach mathematics, but when I tell my students, hey, do you have any questions for a famous artist and somebody that takes pride in their work? And they go, oh, well, who is it? And they look you up right then and there on the spot, and they go, wow. Like literally all day they're saying, wow. And these are high school students, seniors.
Thank you guys.
And so you're to me, and I'll get in this a little bit, you're meeting demographics that aren't into the art world, but you're gravitating them into the art world. Like me now, I'm extremely intrigued seeing your art and wanting to learn more about it. I probably spent 12 hours yesterday.
Oh wow.
Looking up art,
you're right.
Well, and I definitely want to get into that in a moment here about your art. I have, like I said, I have a lot of questions for you on that aspect. But you made a comment on Jordan Lee Peterson's show about the aspect of Koreans tend to vote left, or the Asian community tends to vote left. But if they want to come over here and be conservative, what do you think it is that has that switch going on to where when they're there in their home country and then they immigrate over here, they are making that switch in voting? Is that something that's done maybe through the media or through what
they bought into, I want to tackle this at two fronts. One, because now that you're sharing with me that your students, a lot of young people watch this. Number one, this is going to tie into the Korean aspect of it, is I used to be a liberal. I used to call myself a Democrat. And to the young people like that, when I was their age, I would look at these issues and feel that I was a liberal. But for me, I think I was a liberal because I just didn't know anything. I didn't have the context of understanding actual policy. I just was brainwashed, and I was too busy looking at the faces and how people would describe them and juxtapose such evil with this white Republican or any other stuff. And again, that creation of the split inside of me, I believed it. So I felt that I had to be like that. And I was simply surrounded by other liberals being an artist in that sort of left-leaning field that I felt like that just was the norm. And once I came across Thomas Sowell, even conservative painters that were producing work that I resonated with more, speaking at an art level, once I just looked at the romanticism behind it and then the actual economic breakdown, I'm like, shit, I think I'm a conservative. And I think that's really what it boils down to. A lot of these Koreans who come to this country, the older generation, let's make it clear, they're almost all Republicans. The new young generation who is born as Americans, actually, Korean Americans, a lot of them are voting towards the left. And I think it's the same reason. And what I'm saying is that the reason why I've been blacklisted by a number of galleries and a lot of people attack me in many ways is because if I sucked as a painter, if I was a shitty painter, then they would just ignore me. They can kind of marginalize it. But because I won Artist of the Year, through the Eileen Kaminsky Family Foundation, because I've been written in White Hot Magazine, because I have residencies and my education and all this, like it's almost like my work is so strong too at a gut level without knowing anything about art. My art will hit you. There's an effectiveness there because I shouldn't be towards have a right-wing perspective. But the reason why I'm telling you all this is because I'm a person who is participating in culture because I exhibit in galleries, right? I'm a classical fine artist. And if you look at the breakdown, everything I just said, right side of the aisle, whether it's economics, immigration, abortion, I think we win every time, 10 times out of 10, if you're going to put the logic on the table. But the left owns social media, big tech, art gallery, entertainment, Hollywood, music. This is all spheres of culture. And I think most people today, they're not tuning into Tucker Carlson every day at night. They're actually watching their favorite singer or comedian or Netflix. And that's all creating a cultural fabric and a way to interpret reality. And I think that's why so many people can look at I'm speaking for Koreans, look at their Korean parents who are Republicans, who worked hard and who got them here in the first place. And then they'll turn back and sort of get an axe and destroy the boat that got them to the other side in the first place, because they're in the echo chamber of that sort of information. So that's exactly what happened with this stupid Stop AAPI, Stop Asian Hate shenanigan. I didn't buy it for a second. I knew exactly what they were trying to do. They were trying to cripple the Asian community. Mm-hmm. But because I don't care about being Asian, it doesn't work on me. You know what I
mean? and there's a couple of good points that I thought you made even earlier on. Was you said, oh, it says Korean American and that I'm just American. And that's something I'm constantly talking about on my show, is the left is constantly looking at race. And it's weird because then they're calling the conservatives racist, but we don't care about what you look like.
Yeah, conservatives are more pure. We're more pure people. And people can say things like that's kind of a general statement, but I can prove it. Okay, you just talked about race. Here's a good example. A conservative, they will define racism as bringing race into the equation. You ask 20 conservatives, they'll say, if you care about race, if you bring race into the equation. You ask a liberal, I guarantee you at least two-thirds of them are going to say it's the definition is a systemic force based on historic injustice that needs to be ameliorated. I guarantee you. I mean, it's I don't even need to. My proof is in the pudding, right? So we are tabula rasa in a way. I look at a person, I say, what do they believe in? What is their past decision-making history that tells me about their patterns? And that's just logical and common sense. And we are rooted in common sense, but the left doesn't work that way. The first thing they're gonna do is say, "Oh shit, look at this bald guy. He thinks, you know what? Or they're gonna say, look at Arthur with his hair privilege or whatever it is. It's all noise, man. It's all, and you know what it is? There's a deeper thing that I've come to see, which is that there's a psychological reason why this is all happening. It's of course people can say it's economical, which it is, but everything is really just about the lack of the father. Whether they're actually physically not there, it's being raised by single mothers, or the father is just a weak beta male that's allowing the child to do whatever they want, and believing that everything's relativity. And when the father is not being a positive authority, what that means is that means the kid is going to believe good is what I can get away with rather than doing the right thing, right? So and unfortunately, most people, the reason why they act morally upright is just because they feel like they're going to get caught doing something bad. And again, this is what I'm talking about in regards to the circumstantial nature of human beings. So, but if you can understand that if men essentially do not stand up and do what's right and understand that you need to sacrifice your childish desires and stop competing against women in your sexual conquest, by the way. And that's what they're doing unconsciously, because they want to feel like they have control under sexuality the way a woman has that decision-making power. But stop competing against women too, and then just stand up naturally and do what's right. It changes the whole perspective. But men got to wake up.
Absolutely. And to kind of, there is a similarity here, but to kind of deviate, and somebody that's coming from two sports athletes, is the idea of transgender athletes or transgender. Let me make sure I get this correctly. Transgender, we'll say men or women. I'm not quite sure because we don't know anymore. but how does, and I'm pretty sure we're on the same lines in regards to how you're going to talk about this. But what is your opinion and thinking on these basically men in women's sports or women in men's sports. We'll just keep it at that because it gets all confusing when we talk about transgender going into each one.
I'm going to say something anecdotal, but every athlete will say the same anecdotal experience, and then they'll realize like just ask. Look, okay, when I was competing in judo briefly, I fought rank number 26, 66 kilo guy. Okay, 66 kilo. That's what? That's like 150 something pounds. Okay. At that time when I was competing, I was like 190. So he was weight class is way below me. And he's ranked number 26 in Cuba. Cuba's judo is phenomenal. So this is like a more intense camp kind of thing. He ragdolled me. I could do nothing to that guy. He's lighter weight class than me, but he's not ranked number 26. And I'm not as serious a competitor. You know, I did that when I was in my Taekwondo days. Now I'm doing judo more for like just so that I have that quality of life, right? And I love judo because the mental chess of it. But I couldn't do anything to that guy. He beat me up. I would get back up. He choked me out. He'd throw me down, and he was toying with me. And I was bigger than him. Now check this out. That same day, this is an open sparring session called Randori. I fought rank number 3 woman, the heaviest woman's weight class. Okay. When I'm fighting her, like I immediately realized this girl is gonna kill all of these other girls, but she could not do anything to me, and it has nothing to do with my skill. I'm not comparing myself in that way, but it's just a reality. My foot speed is fast. My foot speed is faster. I'm much stronger. It was just but that has nothing to do with my respect for her. Right. You see what I'm saying? But it just was physically speaking. We're grip fighting. We're in a clinch, and I was like, oh, she's amazing. All these girls are dead. But in my head, I was like, okay, she's ranked number 3, right? And she can't do anything to me. And this is a woman's high level. And she was actually heavier than the guy because she fought at like a heavier woman's weight class. So she was a thick girl. Mm-hmm. So she was closer to my weight than the guy was. And the purpose of me saying that is that it's not fair for these girls who train so hard to get scholarships, who are working their asses off, that, like, put it this way, I love watching women's MMA. Yep. But if you put a man there, I don't want to watch that shit. So I guess my point is that like I think these feminists are getting equality and identicality confused. And I think that's the problem, because like that's you can put that across every board actually. Yeah, that is the problem. And in regards to sports, it's so self-evident. And I know this from personal experience. Like I love watching 2 high-level female judokas fight. I love it, especially the female team in Japan. Those girls are crushing it. Their grip fighting and their angles and their techniques are amazing. And I'm learning from them. And they can teach me so much. But if I fight with them versus top fighter in like Georgia and come on, it's to me it's so ridiculous to even make the comparison, just from a personal experience perspective. As an athlete, as I was an athlete, now I'm a little chunky, but
you and me both.
Yeah, it's all good, man. We're getting older, man.
And you basically said almost exactly to a T what I was talking about on my show, and I want to go a little step further here, because the feminists are now pushing the idea of a wage gap. That we'll talk about soccer. Megan Rapinoe saying, well, we're not getting paid enough money. We should be getting paid as much as the men are. And once again, they're trying to throw gender into it.
Billionaires complaining. Yeah.
And I'm going from the side of, and like you talked about, conservatives, and this is the difference in what conservatives are doing and what they should be doing, which is on your end of getting into the culture and changing the social fabric that way. But what is your thinking on the feminists trying to get paid as much as, say, LeBron James or whatever, when in reality it has nothing to do with the male?
Yeah, I mean, look, the market is going to determine everything in regards to sponsorships as well. I mean, I don't understand, it's like, I know everyone talks about this, and it's at this point, it's kind of like a mantra that the libertarians and conservatives have been saying, but it is true. It's equality of outcome versus equality of opportunity. It really is that. And I think, this is why I'm so into culture, man. This is why I'm so into culture, because unfortunately, your common sense will tell you, can I talk to this person? Is he actually want to have a conversation? But most people, they don't care about data or spreadsheets or pie charts, any of that. It doesn't even register in their head. You have to, the narrative, who controls the narrative? The numbers don't. The numbers don't. The numbers show you the pattern, and that pattern should control the narrative.
Yes.
If we were all logical and if we respect each other enough to hear the conclusions based on the evidence. But people don't look at the evidence. They look at the narrative, and the narrative really is about the good guys versus the bad guys, right? Darth Vader versus Luke Skywalker. It really is that.
Yes.
So, and the left has pretty much owned that for so long. But the problem is that they actually hijacked it. And it was hijacked through the Frankfurt School. And so it really is directly associated with the Marxists, right? So a lot of people don't actually, break this down quickly. The Marxists after World War I, they had all this idea that the proletariat will take over the bourgeoisie. And they believed that it was social science, right? It's a fact. This is gonna happen. And it didn't happen. This idea of paradise on earth didn't happen, right? So they couldn't win economically because what they predicted and what they all collectively knew what was going to happen with solidarity and confidence. They were cocky about this. This is going to happen. It didn't happen. So they said, we can't argue no longer economically, but we're not going to admit defeat. We're going to now substantiate the culture. So they created the Frankfurt School, and it was placed in New York City. And New York City, all the academics started to come out of there, right? And especially with the baby boomers. And now we have this, now it's gone to the point where they're very effective at this. But this is why conservative artists like myself just have to speak up as well. But it's kind of crazy because the past 10 years, I feel like I've been like fighting by myself in the gallery world at least, but I'm still doing so because, it's things will never get better until the silent majority is no longer silent. And I think we're silent because we're respectful and we want to be civil. But the problem is those people at this point today, the polarization is at the point where they don't like you regardless if you're civil or if you're not civil. Either way, they don't like you actually.
Yep.
So you might as well just be speaking your mind. Don't be mean. Don't have anger. Don't have hate in your heart, because then that's stressful and it's a waste of your time. But believe what you believe and don't feel ashamed about it, because you're not a pedophile. You're not like you're not doing something crazy. You know what I'm saying? It's like, yes. But it's insanity. But I'm trying to get people to just speak up. Like that's really my thing nowadays.
And I think you speak volumes again through your artwork. And I'm gonna make a transition here to the hashtag rooftop Asian, or excuse me, rooftop Korean. Let me get that right. And can you talk a little bit about that hashtag and kind of what was influencing you on to do it and kind of where it is now?
Yeah. So Jesse Lee Peterson inspired me, so he says things like July is White History Month, right? Or he'll say, here's the great white hope.
Yeah.
Or he'll do man, he's just so good at coining things. Coining. And guess what? They work, right? Look at President Trump. Okay, people want to hate him as much as they want, but his branding ability, Sleepy Joe, Lying Ted, Crooked Hillary, guess what? They're catchy, they stick. He's playing culture. He's playing the semantic game. He understands that those are carrying agents that have weight behind them, so they stick. So I was kind of joking when I first started Rooftop Koreans, because I was kind of doing it as a counterbalance to stop Asian hate. But dude, one of my IG followers, I got sent this because I'm like, okay, this is maybe this is something we should roll down. And it's because the idea of the Rooftop Koreans are basically those are like super patriots right there. There's an immigration attorney during the LA riots. He told all these Korean fathers that, listen, you guys have sacrificed everything you've worked for, and these riots are destroying your businesses and your livelihood. There's people being assaulted. A lot of them are your children. All these people are your wives, sisters, cousins, whatever. in this country, you can arm yourself to protect yourself. And all of these dads said, I love this country. And they all grabbed the guns, right? And then there was a gun store owner. And when the riots were sort of going to this area, he realized, shit, I'm so outnumbered that all of these criminal people can take all these guns and these guns will be out on the streets. It's going to make things way worse. So he said, guys, he said, they actually announced it on this Korean sort of community radio, come to the gun store. And then they all came and they had no chance at that point because not only, there's also another context to this that's pretty badass. The old Koreans, they even got armed because, we're talking about 3 different generations got armed, and Koreans who, again, Americans with Korean heritage. We should make that clear. But these 3 different generations, it's hilarious. Vietnam War vets, Korean War vets, and the mandatory military of 2 years when they were in Korea. So they're so even if they're outnumbered, and they're outnumbered, it was like something like 70-1. Wow. So it's still crazy. But even with a little bit of their militia strategy, they had no chance. And we don't have a lot of footage of it, but it sounds so brutal. But it was like smashing ants at one point, because which sounds crazy, but the reason why I'm into rooftop Koreans, and any liberal who wants to twist this around, I'm not saying it hurt anyone. The caveats here, caveat time. Okay. But my point is that, like, if we should learn anything with the LA riots, it's very similar to the texture of these Black Lives Matter riots, the George Floyd riots. What's going on with the Officer Chauvin right now? If he's convicted, I mean, if he's acquitted, get ready for hell. Minneapolis will burn. It's going to fall. I mean, it is going to fall, and the ignorance and the arrogance together. Ignorance is arrogance. That's going to be so brutal there. But I guess on top of that is, I want to encourage conservative men, especially, and conservative women out there too, that you got to speak up, and I wouldn't risk it. Arm yourself, because Northern Brooklyn is not too far away from my art studio here. I was able to walk through it. Police would run once the crowd is too big. So I was right there. I'm like, okay, we can't rely on a government agency to protect us either. It sounds so hands-on and almost surreal, but you're not going to even be thinking of this when there's people coming at you and there's no police to protect you. And guess what? A firearm is a great equalizer. A firearm, I mean, for me, I'm a gun advocate more because a symbol sociologically for society of the gun too. But I also am, so I do believe people have to protect themselves, and it can get really bad. And to the conservatives out there, it's only this bad because you guys are not speaking up. Because again, I want to give you guys no choice right now. If he is, and use this Chauvin case as an example, this trial here, if he is convicted, they will say, look at the evidence of systemic racism. This guy was a racist cop killer. If he's acquitted, they'll say America is such a racist place that they allow these cops to go out free after they kill innocent Black men, whatever the narrative is. So they're going to hate you anyways. That's a fact. So you might as well speak up and say what's right, because then at least they hate you while you're standing up without those psychological constraints of feeling like a peon, right? Yeah. And it's better for your kids. This is the only reason why I felt like I never had to speak up, Brad. You have to understand, like I was doing well as a painter, right? I was just able to live my own life quietly, making art and selling it. But I spoke up because it's the cup of bullshit was just was just pouring out. And but it's better for everything collectively. So I mean, it's weird, but I just want to wake people up, But it's odd because, like, I even told Jesse, like, after the show, I'm like, I'm not a radio host, I'm not a public speaker, I'm not a politician, I'm a painter, right? But I was hoping for some people, I was actually trying to speak for conservative artists first, but now what I'm seeing is that people who are afraid, I understand, I empathize if a person has children and a wife and that and their job. I mean, I can get that a little bit, but I gotta say at the same time, like I work in the art industry that's basically dominated by the left, and I'm speaking out so like with like pure like flamethrowers.
Mm.
So just speak up. You know what I mean? It's like because you know you've done nothing wrong, and all the left has, all they have actually, is the unearned sense of moral superiority, and that's what they live off. And once you understand that, that linchpin is out. You know what I'm saying? That's all they have, actually. And numbers. So I mean, pick your fights. Don't be stupid. Sometimes, like I have, like there's like 20 people, and you say, "Yeah" or something, then you gotta run. But if it's a moment where it's you know you're safe, but people's feelings might get hurt. They don't mind trying to hurt your feelings. Don't try to hurt their feelings, but just speak up and be like, actually, both Christ and Buddha did this. Speak the truth, but speak the truth for the sake of truth. Just speak the truth. Don't try to even change their minds. Just say what's right because it's in your heart. And if they're going crazy and blah blah blah, the reaction goes insane. This is why this notion of silent prayer or zazen, these religious teachings, is when something's going crazy in front of you, you cannot calm water by trying to flatten it with your hand. You need to let it be still and wait. And eventually it'll be flat. Same idea. If someone's going crazy in front of you, they're showing all their vehemence and aggression and anger and hate, just watch them like you're watching TV. This is interesting. You can learn this from the religious people. And then, yeah, don't have malice in it, because then you have to carry that evil and that hate in your heart. But just say what's right. And if people get offended by it, that's their problem, actually. They're not entitled to getting inside your brain like some weird zombie. You know what I mean? It's craziness.
And to kind of make the transition into art a little bit, and I'm gonna ask this question, then I want to roll into actually your art, because I have a lot of questions, predominantly because I'm interested in it. And then, but you made the comment that you're an artist, and we as conservatives need to enter into the cultural sphere. But to me personally, I was so excited for you to come on to the show, because I look at you more than just an artist. I mean, the way that you publicize or project your viewpoint and your ideology and what you believe to be true is, to me, what I call an intellectual. And that to me has the biggest voice, even more than me, because we need people like you, and as an artist, as a painter, that's somebody that is able to take their ideas and not just put it in painting for others to see in that sphere, but also the intellectual realm that could take the statistics, that could take the data and make sense of it, not just through art, but also through your words. And so to me, we're both new to YouTube, but your voice and the way that you portray things, in my mind, is you're gonna have a massive impact on the young, but also multiple spheres where I'm kind of, yes, through YouTube trying to get in the cultural sphere, but I still speak in terms of data as a statistics teacher. So,
and we need that too. We need that. We need every dimension. We need to fight it at every dimension. Actually, it's funny because I often tell people my predilections are more towards romanticism rather than but it's true. You need to have, as long as you understand that the intellect is a tool, it's not something that don't let the intellect use you. You have to use it, because Nietzsche talks about this, where some people can become so intellectually lost in their own reality tunnel. That's why you can talk to these college students that will always have an answer for anything, but it's really just circle jerk, and they're able to convince themselves anything they want because I'm using my brain and I'm able to say these words and they sound complicated, and intersectionality, and I'm saying, like, so just understand that intellect that's not grounded in common sense can actually be intellect is a double-edged sword. It's people have to understand it. The psychotherapists understand this. The intellect is a double-edged sword, right? It's incredible. It's the shit, but it can also stab you. So just as long as it's grounded in common sense, and Yeah, one thing I'm trying to have conservatives understand, and I'm doing my first public speaking event actually in Howard County about this subject, is that
Hmm.
conservatives have to take back the culture, but they have to do it in a way that's not cliche. Because often when people hear that, when they hear Andrew Breitbart saying politics is downstream from culture, or if they hear, which is what Dennis Prager also has been saying for quite some time, and Michael Savage, by the way, this has been repeated. They often think that means now I got to paint a fucking American flag with a bald eagle flying across it and a Statue of Liberty. And, it's almost like this is why, like when Daily Wire did that movie Run, Hide, Fight, like I appreciate it, but it's almost like if you're making, like, here's what I mean by that. We just have to understand, we have to take back the understand that romanticism is rooted towards sentimentality, towards traditionality. That's it. That's it. We don't have to do all this other stuff. We don't have to start saying, controlling what the artists want to narrate as conservative creatives. That's not what I mean. They're being a little bit too, they're treating the art like it's an economic plan because we are logical. It's just simply changing the terms and understanding that the Frankfurt School and the postmodernists and the art professors are the ones who made people think that to be a creative person or an artistic person, you're a liberal. You know what I mean? I mean, Jordan Peterson talks about why that is valid to a point, because you're more open-minded. That I totally understand that, but conservatives can be just as open-minded and free, but in regards to government spending or taxation, they can have that. It's not a contradiction to have those sort of perspectives that I don't know why, but the left will say it seems divergent, but it really isn't. I mean, it's your art is one thing, right? But your art is you painting on a canvas. What does that have to do with economic policy? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think we have to simply understand that supporting conservative artists simply means, well, it's two things. Conservative artists have to speak up. That's number one. And I'm one of the headliners here, okay? You have to stop playing the social camouflage bullshit. Stop being a beta male, okay? An alpha male is not about muscles or cars. That can be indicators, but you can see a muscle-bound loser. That doesn't matter, okay? It's not about the externality. It's about an alpha male is somebody who stands up for what's right. That's it. That's it. So we have to do so in our domain. So I've been doing so in the art world, and I think that the second half of it, so that's one for the actual artists. But secondly, the art patrons, the collectors, they can't be quiet either. But it's the same thing, same diagnosis. They need to stop being quiet, because I know so many collectors. Most of my collectors actually are patriots, veterans. I know there's some, I probably shouldn't say their name. There's famous UFC MMA guys. So I mean, my point is that, like, but it's almost like they agree with me, but they're like, I wouldn't say that in public though. It's the same thing, but it shows the intolerance, because a collector that's towards the left, I've seen situations where they find out that the artist they like is a conservative and they don't want their art anymore. But a conservative collector will collect everyone based on just the art they like. So they're even more tolerant, So it's but we just gotta speak up and be vocal, because otherwise they think it's okay to keep encroaching and keep pushing, and it's not. It's really not, because they're there. And matter of fact, most of the richest people I've met are usually all Republicans. Unless they're in the tech world, that's a little bit both. But it's interesting. But I understand, because again, conservatives, we don't want to be rude. We don't want to be rude, but we're not being rude. We're not. That's the thing. That isn't rude. That's the thing. It's really not rude. It's they're being rude. They're the ones being rude. You know what I mean? Yeah, I think that's just what I've been seeing during all this time working in this industry.
And you and me both, and I definitely have a connection with Jordan Peterson, your artwork, that I was looking up last night and kind of studying the different images that's in your artwork. But the connection that I want to make to me doing acting, Screen Actors Guild, to you being in the culture and the art world as well, is I've lost, since I've come out, which was about when Trump was elected.
Yeah.
I've literally lost almost every single one of my friends in Hollywood. I was not a big actor. I did kind of small projects and stuff, but none of them will talk to me anymore. And I was actually told, I'm not going to give the agency's name, but I work with somebody that works for one of the big talent agencies. And I was talking about getting back into it. Hey, look, I got credentials. I got a decent resume and demo. And he said, you're not going to, quote, you're not going to get looked at because you're a white male right now. I'm not even kidding you. So
really,
and
very racist.
So I get it, but before we move into your art, how has it been since you've been talking about more of your conservative ideas now as a painter?
Well, it's funny because I've gotten a lot of hate. You know, I've lost like hundreds of Instagram followers, but I gained hundreds more. So I'm getting way more love, and it makes me want to say two things. I sound like a evangelizing preacher, but it does make me want to say two things. One, which is that anybody who's afraid to come out, like, you know, conservatives are the new gay. You know what I mean? Anyone who's afraid to come out, first of all, the reason why you are is because, one, you don't want to lose your friends. You don't want to hurt anybody like that. I get it. And you're also afraid when that happens, you'll be alone, alienated, and you'll be jumping into this dark abyss and there's no one there to hang out. That doesn't happen. You'll get way more love, but they're gonna all be quiet. I got a lot of friends and a lot of new people in my life now, but they're like, yeah, you know, I wouldn't say it publicly to you, but I really support what you're doing. I get emails like, dude, I really resonate with what you're talking about. And in my head, I'm like, why don't you just speak up? So it's almost like now that I have all these people, I got hundreds of messages, like right after both showings on the JLP show, for instance. I'd tell them all the same thing. I'm like, yeah, so basically just do what I did, just speak up now, you know, because every man has the same power. Again, I don't have to show any of this, but I'm just speaking the truth, and I'm not afraid of letting them control what I believe and dictate and relegate my beliefs to my skin tone or my I don't know, gender, or whatever. Like I've gotten to that point. So yeah, just, you know, it's you just, like, don't be afraid to tell people that you're a conservative. Like them getting mad, they do not deserve, like, people have, again, reliability is scarce, guys. Don't just let people don't just give that up to people. And you can be polite, of course, but if they're showing who they are, don't get frustrated, but just walk away. It's a waste of time. And the people who are gonna not want to be your friends anymore because you have a different opinion about economic problem solving, which is ridiculous, by the way, they're not really your friends. They're not really your friends. It's like when my mother told me when she came to this country, she wanted to, you know, as an egalitarian, she kind of called herself a feminist and all this stuff. Shame on her, by the way. But she told me that the moment she said, you know, I have all these degrees. I'm a composer and all this stuff. Like she's very high education and very high level cello player and composer and all this stuff. And she goes, you know, I think I'm ready to be a wife amongst everything. I want to have kids, right? Which is really what it's about at the end of the day, whether you're a man or woman. She goes, all of these people who are girl power, rah, they all turned on me because they really just support you if you fit their plantation narrative. Yep. You know, so it's all been lies, and it's all coming to the front too. Because you put anything underground and it festers, right? And I think sunlight is the best disinfectant. So what we should see, guys, it's not getting worse. Don't worry, it is not getting worse. Things are getting revealed. Okay, that's the difference. Things are getting revealed, but guess what? You can look at this in a pessimistic way. Oh my God, it's getting revealed. Look how polarized it is. This is terrible. The tug of war. Why can't we just get along? Or you can look at this in a positive way. Now I know exactly where they stand. Now you cannot hide anymore, right? Now I can say, no, you want this because you want to control me and you want power and wealth. Like it's much more clear to say that. but you need to be willing to speak up and trust your gut and trust God and trust your friends who really do care about your well-being. And I think that's really what it boils down to, man. You know?
The way that you speak and the way that you portray conservative thought is going to attract a lot of people. And I see the influences of other conservatives or other intellectuals like Jordan Peterson, and to make the connection to your artwork on me looking at it last night and doing more research, because I lack in the understanding of how to read art, to look at art. I'm a numbers guy. And
Awesome. Yeah.
something that
You're probably
intrigued me.
better at it, actually, believe it or not.
Well, I'm gonna look at this as more of me learning from you, the artist, and you kind of teaching me a little bit about art. But something that really resonated with me through your art was not just how beautiful it was, but the idea that Jordan Peterson talks about order and chaos and
Mm,
yin and yang, and with the Tao. And hopefully I'm saying the middle part correctly.
yeah,
But
yeah.
that Tao is where that order and chaos meet. And for me, I think that your art portrays that idea of order and chaos, because there's so many colors going on, but that placement of your color palette and where each color is, in my mind, and I don't know for sure, this is more of a question, has a specific placement and purpose on top of what those images are showing to meet that idea of, yes, there's a lot of disorder that may seem like it's going on, but it all is packaged as well as order. And you have that perfect fine line of order and chaos. And to me, that's what makes your art so intriguing, beyond also the idea of what you're truly portraying in your thoughts and your ideas on a canvas.
You should be my spokesperson. That's well said. No, that's very well said, because there's nothing random about my placement. It's completely intentional, and you can create space in two ways. You can actually draw perspective,
Mm.
right, and that can move the viewer's eye in a certain way, or you can play with contrast, right? And everything is contrast in regards to our senses. On and off in regards to volume. Uh, Music, space versus having a note, and even in regards to color theory, it's I always create contrast. So I'll put a lot of blues with orange next to it, so it pops up. So if you see a bucket and there's 30 blue balls in there, and I put one orange ball, where's your eye gonna go? The orange ball, right? So it's but if I now put a red ball in a certain area, so that now it makes the transition to the orange in between with the yellow, and I that's why I'm playing with, basically. It's kind of like a puzzle with constant moving pieces, but also I'm trying to pull off the symbolic language too. So I'm often trying to do a lot at the same time, because the artist side of me, the studio side of me, is I'm competing against my last painting. I'm just always trying to challenge myself and grow. But it's yeah, and the symbolic part of it too is what takes it to the next level too, because I want to be able to speak to anyone, a person, a little kid sees my work and feels, oh, I like lions, awesome, let's talk about that. Or a professor might come in and say, you put the Virgin Mary next to this Chinese food dog because you're talking about the sacredness of protecting the mother and the child. Like, they can extrapolate these ideas, or go down to Joseph Campbell, whatever it is, right? But I will say that, like, I get so many influence from so many beautiful people out there. But and I appreciate what you just said. Like, I hope to be more influential towards the good and share this good with my, with ideally beautiful art too. I think that's a very unique combination that I offered our world. But I will say that, like, I am, first and foremost, I'm an artist. I'm a painter. I'm in the studio all day.
I bet.
and I want to see it all proliferate, of course. But I feel like that also is my marketability in a way, because I really am I'm a person who spends, there's the organic fluid side and the passionate side of creating work, but there's this mechanical side too. I'm a person who's literally in the studio for 8 hours a day painting. You know what I mean? And I just feel, I will say I do have a almost equal passion towards spreading truth, because I do believe that it is our responsibility as men
Mm-hmm.
to care about social cohesion. I really do. You know, I've often said at like a baseline level, you know, like let's say a woman's interested in you, she's not gonna really approach you. She's gonna do things to make you come to her, or she's gonna be around your bubble. But she's not gonna say, "Hey, how's it going?" You know, I wanted to, you know, check you out, whatever,
Yeah.
whatever the hell, you know. So you can't suddenly expect a woman to care about a large scale sociological issue and jump up 10 levels, which is much harder to do, which is speaking to at the public domain about something like that. You know, I mean, there are the women who do that, but those are really rare,
Mm-hmm.
right, in regards to the percentage. But men, not only do we have to approach women when we're in our teens, we need to step up, and eventually you should graduate to the next level of speaking up, which is bringing back the order of life and fighting for familial cohesion
Mm.
and individual rights rather than the collective. That's what it boils down to. And I feel like we have that intrinsically in our gut too, right? But with public school, with the left's ideological subversion, they're just pushing that down more and more. It's all about disarming fathers and disarming people with guns.
Yep.
You know, when people don't have fathers and guns anymore, ooh, we no longer have the power, you know, in our own hands. I think I totally changed the topic what you asked me to, by the way.
No, and it's still on topic, because again, everything we're talking about is portrayed in your artwork, and that's
yeah, that is true. I like to paint a lot of masculine imagery because I think that masculinity is the most hated thing today. I really do think so, because like even this notion of toxic masculinity and all this stuff. And you know, and the funniest thing though is that I do actually blame men for that, because the men who either participate in hookup culture, they're actually unconsciously fueling these feminists who are bitter towards men, because they still haven't found a man that is willing to endure and almost correct them and guide them in the right light. So they're actually unconsciously fueled by that. So in a way it is, but I do think that the hatred of men, that's not acceptable. You can't be hating men like this, because it's almost like if I said all women are narcissistic whores. Like, you know, that's the same thing as saying all men are patriarchal tyrants. No, we can also be the wise king. That's a duality, right? So it's yeah, I'm trying to bring back positive masculine light, so that men will know how to handle women by understanding that don't compete with women, though, which is what this whole sex grades culture right now is. That's really what it is. They're competing against women. It's so strange for me.
Yes, you and me both. And I think
yeah.
a lot of conservatives, and I'm looking at a lot of your paintings here, and I'd like to post some up on the screen as we go.
Yeah.
But I've noticed there's a lot of connections, and always correct me if I'm wrong, please. I don't want to misrepresent what you're painting, but
Sure.
there seems to be a connection between Christianity and Buddhism in a lot of your paintings. Yeah. And there's, and I'm a Christian, and there's a lot of connections to be made, but what are you trying to show through that idea of Christianity and Buddhism within?
So I'm a non-denominational Christian. Let me first be clear. I am a Christian, but I've always been so interested in Buddhism. And people can say, "Oh, it's because you're Asian." Well, maybe, but the person who actually got me really interested in Buddhism is a white guy. So I don't know about that. Gentleman by the name of Alan Watts. And Alan Watts was like my man crush philosopher when I was a kid. And it's just, well, his ability, he has the gift of the gab also. His level of articulation is incredible. But he's one of my greatest sources of my art, inspiration-wise, the context that he spoke from. And I think the Buddhists get a lot of things correct, but okay, couple things though. So getting into comparative religion a little bit and how that pertains to the greater society and politically as well. This idea of Buddhism is like packageable Hinduism. It's like cooler. It's like a cool Hinduism. because because all the ideas are more easily translatable. There doesn't have to be 100 million variations of gods and all this stuff.
Mm.
It's more reduced, and it's more translatable in that way. But many people, they think that Jesus was the individual who experienced cosmic consciousness, so he understood his connection to the Father. And what happened is, he lived in a tyrannical government called Rome during that time, and the religious language they had, he had to say, I'm the son of God, rather than saying I woke up, or
Mm.
or the language structure was different. But I feel like if Jesus said, "Oh my God, I'm God," to Hindu sadhu monks, they'll say, "Yeah, yeah, congrats,
Mm.
you found out." Yeah, so it was something that spiritually for me, I think that um Buddha and Christ, what they both have in common is they're like different forms of alpha males, essentially. The spiritual figure that men want to be like, essentially.
Mm.
But and they have that in common because I think they both had that cosmic consciousness experience. And I've had something of that sort with psychedelics, and I had my phase with a lot of entheogens. But I think that that's sort of the reason why I find them both so attractive. But I will say has Christ is what they both have in common is this notion that real men should be religious and sort of be spiritual. That's what they have in common, because otherwise, you know, Carl Jung's notion that the fear of God is the beginning to wisdom,
Mm.
idea that you need to have something you believe you are under, actually. If you don't believe that there's an authority that you should be under, then what are you going to do? You're going to live in relativity,
Yep.
right? Or you're going to want bigger government, right? That's why all the atheists are all leftists, essentially. That's how they vote statistically. So my perspective is that I believe Buddhism and Christianity are the two modern religions that really have a chance
Mm.
to really awake people up towards being better people. But I do put more eggs in Christianity, because the Christians, not only do they want to have that sort of peace, they also will stand up for what's right, and be have no, like, they're willing to fight for what's right too, though. Because a Buddhist will basically say, this isn't right. We shouldn't be doing this. Like, let's say a Buddhist will tell a Black Lives Matter protester that's vandalizing, that's wrong. That's what they'll say to themselves. And they believe that, and they're right to think that. But then they'll watch it happen and say, shame on that person.
Mm.
Whatever, right? Something like that, or get dissociated. A Christian will say the same thing, but then they might say, stop that. What are you doing? Knock it off. The Christian has a little bit more fearless action, I've noticed.
Mhm.
That's the one thing, that there's some bravery, that it's almost like, I'm playing serious bro psychology, like religious person, but this is just my interpolations. A Christian is like a more bold and um machoer Buddhist in a way for me. I don't know where I'm going with this, but I don't know. I put myself in the shoes of these figures I paint, actually, and I just
Mm.
imagine what that sort of reality would be, and then I sort of feel that sort of the different direction my brain would go, and I
Mm.
feel like Christ was just way, like, Christ had to go against Rome. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
The Buddha, he was already rich. He let go of all that, and I think that's true in regards to the material world. That conservatives, they put values and spirit higher than even materiality, which
Mm.
is why they actually get better at their materiality too, because it's in the right hierarchical structure. And liberals, they just want materiality, control, and power. I do agree with that, because we have religion. So, but I think that in my experience, I believe that Christianity and Buddhism have so many similarities, and in the Joseph Campbell way, that when these two cultures do not communicate with each other, but they produce very similar narratives and similar substructures, it implies an archetypal truth that is in human nature to narrate
Mm.
regardless of the externalities. So for me, there was something really interesting. But so they're very similar, but Christ is definitely much more of a gangster in that realm.
And I just find it fascinating because I'm looking at the artwork of Rebirth and the connection.
Yeah,
It's the color scheme. One is beautiful. Two, I believe to be white doves.
Yep.
And then the idea of rebirth, like for me, when I see white doves like that, to make the connection to Christianity, I'm thinking, okay, the lighting on Jesus, right? The connection between God and Jesus happening. And then forgive me, I'm not too eloquent or knowledgeable on Buddhism, but I'm assuming a Buddhist figure sitting right in the middle.
Yeah, that's a Gandhara Buddha. Yeah. So that was it's funny because I just started this vlog. I think that's going to be like the next episode that my assistant here is going to produce and its production, because I actually started that. Like I was sketching ideas before, and I have stacks of sketchbooks, and like really high. It goes up really high now because I have so many. So I sketched out what I wanted to do, and usually I go into it with control, right? But I had a birthday party here. This is in January though, and then I got pretty inebriated. So I just said, "Hey guys, I'm gonna draw for y'all straight up right here, right now." So I just did it kind of live and all that. So, but that's how it was produced, Yeah, that's a beautiful one. No, I mean, it didn't get to that point. It was almost the initial stage of what I did, and then I had to go back into it because my painting style is so many layers and layers and layers and layers and layers and layers that yeah, I'm gonna make a vlog about that episode probably.
I would love to know when that's out so that I can inform everybody else.
Sure. Yeah.
Because this
my vlog is weird, by the way, because it's all over the place. It's not just my art. It's like it's interesting.
the one, well, I could say that when I saw what actually got me to look you up was somebody wrote on my channel, check out Arthur Kwon Lee, got connected. Cool. And then when I saw the Rooftop Asian video, I personally, there was a story there. There was obviously the way that it was created for me was top notch. And then obviously the way, and as I keep mentioning, the way that you speak and connect ideas together, I thought it was great. So I'm looking forward to really anything that you post, to be honest with you.
Oh, thank you, brother. I appreciate it. Yeah, and those of you tuning in, my Instagram is Arthur Kwon Lee, and my YouTube is also Arthur Kwon Lee. My YouTube game is really new. But it's funny because my Instagram will have like, 8,000. I mean, that's not that big, but it's a good following. But then my YouTube is like fraction, but it's all good. We're gonna get there. We're gonna both get there, brother.
Amen to that. Amen to that. There's another piece here. It seems like there's a connection to Roman culture. And I think hopefully I'm getting that right, to make connections with other cultures as well. Can you kind of expand a little bit on that idea of influence from Rome? Or
yeah, so I have an impulse to produce and select my figures based on two attractions, I guess. Yeah. And one side is obviously just the aesthetics. Sometimes things are just so well done, and a sculpture I might see at the Met is just so beautifully produced. I might want to render something similar, or actually just I'm drawing that figure right there. I'll take the sketchbook, something of that sort. So that's one angle. It's an aesthetic dive into it. But then the other side is I like to show multiple different cultures onto one canvas, and it's a very American thing I'm doing with that, right? But what I'm really known for, Brad, is what I'm known for is resurfacing traditionality and sort of, and often in a masculine form onto the canvas. That's kind of what I'm known for, because I think we live in such a time where decadence is normalized and traditionality is thrown out the window, and it's just looked upon as outdated and purely ephemeral, Mm-hmm. So in many ways, what I'm doing is I'm trying to plant these seeds of our pedagogical past, and so that we can still be grounded in those in that collective wisdom, imagistic wise, because I'm doing this with symbols and imagery. But this is what I'm diving into, Brad. So when I'm putting all these different cultures, it's it's often any kind of symbolic reference that really spoke to me, I put onto the canvas. Now, I will tell you, just to make it clear, often I it's like I might read something about this one samurai. I'll be like, wow, this is amazing. I'll like stop reading right there because I already feel like I want to paint it. I need to go while it feels hot, so I just go paint it. So there's a lot of that going on. So like I've had professors and critics come to my studio and they've understood the imagery way further than I have, almost every time. But as an artist, because again, I have a more romantic impulse actually. I was just captivated by saying I have to render this figure. This will look beautiful next to this. I just read about this figure here. This stacks very well with this one. So now I'm going to play them together. So there's a lot of spontaneity going on too. But yeah, I think that's the beauty of it. I'm sort of creating in this sweet spot of order and chaos. Like you said, it's really interesting. Yeah.
And like I said, it's gorgeous work. And as you're speaking, I'm literally scrolling through your Instagram, and there was a piece that I was looking at it last night, and it was a very patriotic piece.
This is a large, very large work. It's almost like mural size. And that was simply my experiences with 2020. It has so many different juxtaposed imagery. It has implication for the Chinese flag in the top corner. I'm looking at it right now, actually. It has like the Capitol Hill on the side. It has all the law enforcement figures. It has the samurai Hagashige, who I'm a fan of. It has all of this, dystopian tension and drama. And I wanted that painting to really feel heavy and weighted. I didn't want that painting to be like, a lot of my paintings are colorful and bright and happy. And it's almost like vivid, right? And vibrant. But I wanted that painting to be really dense and weight. Like I didn't want it to necessarily to feel beautiful and uplifting. But I wanted to sort of, that was my interpolations of what happened in 2020, and all the drama associated with it.
And that was exactly my question was, and you answered it to T, was I noticed, I loved it so much and I wanted to ask about it, which is why I was getting frustrated. I couldn't find it there. I was like, where is this thing? Because I wanted to make a note about it, because the color palette was so different than what I've seen in your other artwork. And to me, when there is a change like that, there has to be a reason for it. And when you're making that connection to, I believe you said 2020, it's so much more impactful too. When people, I've never been to an art gallery. This is talking to you is going to push me literally to go buy a ticket to an art gallery extremely soon. When you go to art,
thing though. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, just before you do that, because I don't want you to waste your money, is a lot of art today sucks.
Okay.
A lot of art today sucks. And that is entirely because of the left.
Is there a way to find which
would be a lot of art is great, but make sure you really research the place. Like I would definitely go to go to museums. Always go to museums. Although you're gonna still see a lot of crap in like the more modern art section, but there is a movement that I hope that will really stick. This idea of like a new romanticism or something like that, because like it's almost like we've been doing the relativity thing so much, or anything is anything. Men can be women, kids are, you know what I'm saying. You know what I was gonna get at. Like it's like everything. It's all social deconstructionism. Everything can be interchangeable so that it can fit my narrative. And we've been doing that for so long that I'm hoping we can kind of go back to more of a traditional sentiment, and with an egalitarian spirit, right? But towards something more passed down. So I'm hoping we can go down that a little bit again. But I would say those interested in art need to support those types of artists as well. So because that's going to be, then they'll get more attention and that'll placate the narrative. So as you go forward, just research first, and you can never go wrong with looking at historical art. Like if you're in New York, go to the Met. Of course, go to the Met. My God, the Met is well worth your money. It's worth a trip to go there. You know what I'm saying? So, where you can see actual Greek statues, the Impressionist painters, like the masters that people look at as, yeah, but that was a long time ago. Yeah, well, yeah. you won't waste your money there. You'll enjoy it. It'll be entertaining to do that, but modern galleries today, just be picky with those, because a lot of that is waste your time. But at the end of the day, it's there's a lot of good artists, but there's just a lot of bad artists promoted due to art education and liberal ideology. So what are you gonna do?
The one thing I like is you talk about supporting artists. Where can people find your art? Where could people go and support you?
Oh, yeah, you can go to my website, arthurkwonlee.com. If you would like a work, you fill out the form. My assistant will see it. We're so direct and transparent. Just give us a price point. We'll tell you what we have at that range. Because all my work is fully appraised. I have people doing that for me. Follow me on Instagram on Arthur Kwon Lee, and my new YouTube thing, my fellow YouTube new kid on the block here, Brad, is Arthur Kwon Lee as well. And I think I only have 2 videos out now, but I think I'll be putting one out tomorrow. But it's very different. It's not even art related in many ways, but it's something that was sentimental for me. So, but yeah, that's where you can find me as of now. I don't do any of the Twitter and all that. I probably should. But yeah, you can find your man in YouTube, IG, and Google, or my website, Arthur Kwon Lee. Arthur Kwon Lee, Arthur Kwon Lee, Arthur Kwon Lee.
I'll make sure I put in all of those links that you give and in the description. So please make sure you go support Arthur Kwon Lee. Arthur, thank you so much for joining the Bald Brad Show. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Brad, I appreciate you, man. Let's keep on going, brother.
Amen to that. Thank you again.
Absolutely.